Welcome to Staffing Stories, hosted by Andy Moss. Andy has been in the staffing industry for over 25 years, first as a recruiter, then eventually an account manager and business owner. This is the podcast where we sit down with fellow staffing owners to get the real stories of the successes, the failures, and the lessons learned along the way.
I'm your host, Andy Moss, and we're back with Staffing Stories podcast. And we've taken a little break just here in the springtime, but we're back at it. And I've got a fellow Tennessee guest, Mr. Taylor Duncan from Nxt Level, one city over to the west, Nashville. And we welcome you to the podcast and just, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thrilled to be here. Thanks, Andy. So I'm Taylor Duncan. I'm the COO of Nxt Level and Nxt Attorney. Nxt Attorney is just the legal brand, essentially, of Nxt Level. We are a recruiting agency. You can think more headhunting agency here, located just south of Nashville, technically in Brentwood, Tennessee. I am relatively new to the state, so you've been here a little bit longer. I am 2.5 years into Nashville, came from Chicago by way of, collegiate sports, moved into running a business and entrepreneurship, moved into getting out of the Midwest during COVID down here to Nashville, and landed here with my wife and 5 kids.
Well, so Nashville's an awesome town. I'm sure you're acclimating with the traffic and everything.
See, from Knoxville, you might think this is bad traffic. From Chicago, yeah, the traffic here is not so bad.
Okay. So you're okay sitting in the traffic for 15, 20 minutes.
15, 20 minutes is nothing.
Okay.
An hour and a half, that's where it gets brutal.
Okay. Well, we're glad to have you on. And this is, it's always a fun discussion talking about people's genesis story and how they kind of got into this. And you mentioned the collegiate route. So many in our staffing community come from a college athletics background. So maybe start there and then kind of, weave your way through it.
Yeah. So actually at Nxt Level, we have really started to identify, and a lot of what we look for are former college athletes. We have a basketball player who played at UT, a cheerleader from Arkansas, a baseball player from Clemson, golfer from University of Nevada, swimmer from Kentucky. I played football and track at Wisconsin and the University of Illinois. We've started to recognize, and then we have others who did junior college sports and stuff like that. We've started to recognize, so you mentioned how do you get into recruiting, the genesis story. Well, recruiting isn't a major in college. So I don't think anyone really goes to college to be a recruiter or to get into the recruiting industry. How I landed in it, like I had said, I had done entrepreneurship and I had run a company that more or less trained college people to do sales, marketing, and build a small business in their local community. And we had about 1,000 salespeople across the country every year. And I was running that on a national level. That's actually how I know the CEO of Nxt Level. And we decided to kind of put our brains together and grow this. So recruiting to me, in most ways of thinking about it, is really sales at a high level. And I was taught that from my mentor at my old company that I eventually bought the business from, was the highest form of sales is recruiting. You're selling someone's career path, etc., right? You're helping them identify what they're best. So you don't go to college oftentimes even to get into sales, but you land into it. Why college athletes? Why do we look for college athletes? Why are college athletes successful for us? Why was I successful, etc.? I think they have a combination of competitiveness, a drive for winning. It's a meritocracy, which recruiting should be. There are some companies who don't run it that way, but it really should be. It's how, it's your job to go find the right people, find the right clients, be the right matchmaker, etc. And to us, that really comes down to your ability to sell, or as we call it, go on the hunt.
Yep.
And I think people who are good at swimming, for instance, They've been yelled at by a coach for 15 years. They've had to wake up at 6 in the morning to go to practice. When they get out of practice and they're away from the pool, or they're away from the baseball field or whatever, it doesn't end, right?
Yeah.
Sports don't stop when you leave the field. If you're going to be a good athlete, it's what you eat, it's how you train, it's when you go to bed,
Yep.
etc. And so
Very disciplined.
you've been raised in that way of thinking. So when it comes over to recruiting and this idea of now I'm going to go hunting for whatever it is I am, if I can apply the same things that made me successful at sports to what I do here, I'll be really good at it, assuming I have good communication skills.
Well, it's also with athletes that I've found they understand the wins and losses and how to handle loss. And I've mentioned that on past podcasts, but it's, man, being able to pick yourself up off the court or ball field and with your teeth kicked in, you've got to get back out there. In our business, there's a ton of failure to get to that win.
Oh yeah.
And so, being able to handle that is a different mindset.
100%. I think all business has a lot of failure, right?
Yeah.
And to me, our world is wins and losses. We are goal oriented, not task oriented. It's not just, did I complete the task and turn in the paper?
Yeah.
There's a lot more to do with, did I win or did I lose?
Yeah.
And that's sales in general. That's, in many cases, that's business in general. So, we get paid oftentimes by a client when we win for them. And so that's how we generate revenue. So we have to go out and make that win, which is the same thing as sports. Hopefully you get a trophy when you win, when you play better than the other team, when you make less mistakes than the other team, when you have more energy, when you're stronger, faster, whatever.
Yeah. You don't get a trophy for participating in the search.
No. Nope. That's not how we do things. And
Exactly.
that's what we sell our clients. We aren't going to just waste your time. We are here to get you a win. We're here to save you time, actually.
So you started your own business, and you got together with your CEO and started recruiting. And did you run a desk yourself? I mean, how did you cut your teeth in it?
Really cut my teeth in recruiting at my old company. I recruited for my own business, right?
Yep.
So that I was running, and I was then coaching and teaching recruiting across the country for 20 years. A different, element. We weren't working on IT or legal or anything. We were recruiting internally for our company, but the same basic components, principles, right? And then our CEO, who had been my top sales guy, top recruiter for 4 or 5 years up in the Pacific Northwest, he left the business and he went and actually got into the recruiting industry at Zillow, Facebook, etc.
Yeah.
So he ends up leaving our company, goes and becomes very successful in the recruiting space, learns it quite a bit. I keep running the business. We don't talk for 5 or 10 years. I moved to Nashville and he moves to Nashville almost at the same time. And neither of us really knew anyone. So we said, hey, let's go grab coffee. And I had a really close friend up in Chicago who had a recruiting business up in the city, and he had done really well. And I had gotten to know him and understood the basics of the industry.
Yeah.
And so as I sold the business, I thought, well, hey, I might want to get into that. That's something I think I could do well. And him and I had some brief talks. So I moved down here, met with our CEO, Shane, who was running a real small recruiting agency, and then COVID kind of got in the way of how they were operating things. And we thought, well, why don't we put our heads together? He was a guru in the recruiting space. I knew how to grow and expand a business. Why don't we plant our flag here in Nashville and expand this? And we did. We went from 3 to 25 people in 2 years, year and a half, and continuing to grow.
That's awesome. I mean, scaling a business, starting a business is one thing. Scaling it is at a whole another level. And some people are good at it and some people are not. Managing yourself and 1 or 2 recruiters is great. But man, multiple offices, multiple states, managing from a phone conversation versus in person, do all your employees around you, or are they all remote? How do you handle it?
During COVID, we made the decision to, again, kind of be in office. We felt that was really important. still feel like that's really where the world is going to move back towards, is more of an in-office feel / hybrid feel.
Yep.
This idea that it's possible, and I'm not saying it's an impossibility to have remote staff throughout the world, throughout the country, et cetera. And we do have some. We have some people that are in Seattle. We have an office in Dallas and Birmingham. So we do have people a little bit more spread out, but the vast majority of our people are internal here in Brentwood, and that's our plan, is to grow that more.
Yeah.
We feel like being together is part of our strength because we can collaborate real easily.
And train.
Train and coach. It's really important when we have an account executive and a recruiter are able to ask each other questions, because their desks are 25 feet apart, and it doesn't have to be, I sent them an email or I sent them an internal message, but they're not going to respond for 3 hours. And by the time they respond, I've moved on to a different task. Then I got to come back to it. It's way easier to collaborate. It's way easier for us to go into our training room, meet as a small team who's working on a client, discuss that client, what's the best strategy for it, et cetera. So we are attempting to have a more in-office concept. Mm-hmm. Again, we do have some people external, who are off-site, which has a different dynamic to it.
Well, I think, the young professionals that we bring into our business, they want to be around other individuals. They're either used to fraternities, sororities, teams where they're always around somebody. They're not by nature someone you put in a room and shut the door. That's just not who they are.
Correct.
And I think companies are finding out that is not a healthy work environment. I mean, we are human, we are social, and that it's going to backfire. So I think most of the recruiting agencies that I'm talking to are starting to bring people in kind of a hybrid role where they're in and out, but it's more around each other than separated, unless you're, hiring very mature recruiters that understand it. They're very good at what they do and very specific in their industry. So that's a whole different ballgame. They could do it on their own.
Yeah, I again, to your point, we're looking for hunters, people, and they're outgoing people.
Yeah.
They are people, and we said college athletes, you have the swimmer from Kentucky or the basketball player from UT. You don't go train on your own 360 days a year and then show up 5 nights for games and try to play with these. You are constantly together in the locker room. That's why one of our values is team is family. And we don't say that means we just have fun together. There's going to be fights. There's going to be arguments. There's going to be people who for a week don't want to necessarily work with someone else because they're frustrated about it. That's okay that you do that in a family. I got 5 kids. My kids don't always want to hang out with each other. But at the end of the day, they will always know to trust their family, their siblings. And that's what we believe we're creating here. It creates a new dynamic. But yeah, I think it's important.
So let's talk about family, and how do you balance being in the recruiting industry where it's 24/7? You decide which hours you work, but it's a 24/7 business. How do you balance that with a large family and their activities and things like that? I'm sure your wife is very supportive of it.
Yes, she is. She has been. I think to some extent, this is why I've always argued the importance. My old company trained college students in the importance of training yourself at the age of 19, 20, 21, what the work world's going to look like. I think a lot of college students and a lot of parents send their kids off to college and saying, just enjoy college. Don't work. Don't try, just go to school, get decent grades, and then, have fun, have the college experience. And I didn't do that. I had a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I had plenty of fun in college, but my first 2.5 years I played 2 sports at the Big Ten level. So it was, 50 hours a week of sports. There was never a day off. In fact, the football team, the day off technically was Sunday, and that was really our hardest day. We just didn't have practice, but we had running, lifting, and film. There was never a day off. And so when I started dating my wife, I had left sports, but I had started this other business, or I had started working in the other business. I hadn't bought it yet. So she didn't know otherwise when we were dating that's how it was going to be. It was going to be, I was working, I was spending time with her, and we were just busy people. So she's never known it otherwise. So if I have to take a call at 9 o'clock, she doesn't look at me like, what are you doing? She understands, hey, I'm doing it. At the same time, I have to make sure I create some boundaries. I mean, I try really hard not to work at home, and have done that for multiple years because I didn't want my kids to grow up and go, oh, dad always works.
Yeah.
I almost don't want them to see, I want them to know I work hard, but not to see me work 24/7.
Correct. I totally
I
agree.
like coming to the office because it's, occasionally I work at home, but when I'm at home, I try to be pretty present with them. When I'm at their baseball game, I'm not on the phone the whole time. Sometimes I take a call. For the most part, I don't.
So I get asked this all the time. I got 4 kids. Are your kids going to get in the business? And I stop and I'm like, I wonder if they will or won't, or they'd be good recruiters or not. What do you think any of yours would follow dad in the business, or would you even want that?
Oh, I don't care what they end up doing. And I've said the same thing about sports. I don't care what sport you play.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't really need them to be in sports, although I would think they're probably going to go down that path because that's what I'm mentally do and have been able to teach them. But ultimately, I just want them to work super hard and push to be the best at whatever. If they want to be a doctor, great. Now, if you met my kids, I don't think any of them would strike you as a doctor. So probably, will they follow into the recruiting space? Maybe. With 4 kids, you got 4 different personalities, I would assume.
Yeah, I have, yes.
I have twins, and they are very different. Both girls,
twins.
but they're very different. And I assumed they would be like the exact same person. No.
Yeah. I've got twins also.
Okay. Where are they at in your order?
I have a 20-year-old, and then the twins are 18, and they're all boys. And then we adopted my daughter, and she's 5. So that little girl coming late in life is a blessing, but they're all different, different.
So we had 3, and then we had 3 boys. We wanted a girl, and we got 2 of them. So we have them at the back end of ours. And again, all 5 are different. Will they end up in recruiting? Maybe. I didn't expect to. That wasn't, part of my life plan.
Nobody ever does. Yeah. I mean, I've never talked or interviewed anybody that said, I wanted to be a recruiter in college. I got recruited into it. I fell into it. Everybody was drug into this business one way or the other. No one goes to school with the ambition of saying, I want to do that. Right. I haven't talked to him yet. I'm sure there's somebody out there, but if you are that person, you want to be on the podcast, direct message. I'd love to get your story. But we're all, recruited into this by somebody, and it's always good to talk to guys like you and that have started.
Who do you think is the good fit for recruiting? When you think about it, because you're right, no one sets out to do it, but a lot of people do it. Recruiting is a pretty large industry.
Somebody who, I love athletes. I love community-driven individuals like fraternities, sororities. I think individuals that have worked, have held a job, understand the winning and losing. Like, there is a consequence to losing, and understand that they had to, go get a job because they had to pay a car payment or had to do this because there's a consequence that they don't work. They don't make that car payment. I'm trying to find those individuals that had to do something around work to get something. And because that light bulb is going to go off when they make a placement and they get that. It's like, man, if I make more placements, I get more money. And, money's not everything, but you have to have a drive of, okay, that's your touchdown. That's your home run.
It's your scorecard.
Yeah, it's your new personal best record. So if we don't give participation trophies. I don't pat you on the back for showing up on work. I expect you to show up to work. So I struggle sometimes with some of the attitudes of this newer generation, but there are great ones in it. You just have to kind of go through several of them. And there are great people I talk to and interview. They just have never had to work for something. And I know from experience, they're going to fail because as soon as they hit the wall, they're not going to pick themselves back up. That's not their DNA. They've never had to do it. They've never had their teeth kicked in. And so, but they're great people and they would work great in another industry, just not ours. That's my recipe for it.
Yeah, I don't know that I would disagree with anything in there. It's, that idea of there's wins and losses. It's a meritocracy. It's you want something, go get it.
Yeah.
And that might mean you're making calls from 7 to 9 p.m. because that's the best chance to get a hold of people. But that's where you're going to get your win.
Yep. I totally agree with it. But, this has been a good conversation. I love being able to hear, and a lot of our people love to hear what, who do you hire? Why do you hire? What do you do? So this has been great. So I'm going to wrap it up with one question. So if you're streaming a TV show right now, what are you, a sci-fi guy?
No.
Hulu? What's your go-to?
I think we're all in that same boat of some way, shape, or form, getting on Prime Video, Hulu, Netflix, Paramount. Are you as frustrated as I am at the fact that they told us to cut our cable cord because it was going to be cheaper, and then you ended up getting 16 different, and now you have to log into a different app? Right now, mostly, and I didn't expect this, have fallen into a lot of the whole documentary, docuseries, true crime. I'm not super impressed. Well, I don't have 2 dedicated hours to watch a movie. You have 4 kids.
No.
It's like, to sit and watch a movie for 2 hours with my kids as involved as they are doesn't happen. So it's a lot of 30-minute to 1 hour each night. I'll say my favorite recent one that I would recommend to anyone is The Chosen, which is a dramatization essentially of the Gospels of the Bible. If you haven't seen it, it's a really interesting business story. That's where I got into it. I actually got into it from the founder was on a business podcast where he talked about they're the largest crowdfunding media company of all time.
What is
That's
that
how
on?
it got
Netflix?
started. Well, it's on, you can download the Angel Studios app and watch all of the 3 series there, or series 1 is on Netflix, and I think series 2 is on Hulu or Prime Video.
Okay.
And then series 3, you have to download their app, and they've released them a bunch of different ways, but no one owns their content except for the actual crowdfunded people in the studio. It's really interesting. Yeah, really. If you read up on how it all got founded and started and took off, that's the cool part, is the business behind it is really interesting, and seeing how crowdfunding took them to a place where now they're doing some really cool stuff.
That's awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope you had fun on our podcast. And
this was a blast.
I'm glad you were neighbors.
Yes, and I'm going to be out in Knoxville in late June. Yeah, late June. I'll have to stop by and say hi.
Yeah, please do. It's going to be hot.
I'm sure it will. It'll be hot here.
All
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks, Taylor.
Bye-bye.
The Staffing Stories podcast is brought to you by 3DIQ. Founded by recruiters for recruiters, 3DIQ's industry-leading product suite complements your submission process in Bullhorn from start to finish and helps you deliver a cutting-edge customer experience. Triple your placements with our powerful resume submission platform, candidate marketing, and client portal. Visit 3diq.com/stories to learn more.
Great job.